First lesson of the third unit, 3.1, is on Salonika, the Jewish metropolis. I talked about the golden era of the 16th and 17th century. The 18th century is a period of decline after Sabbatianism and the false messiah, and everyone selling all their property and falling into dismay. In the middle of the 19th century is a period of Europeanization, modernization, prosperity, the activization of the Sephardic community. Jews become more immersed in world commerce and regional commerce. The community has many poor people, but the community is affluent. It's exemplary in terms of philanthropy, and so here I'm giving you some of the headlines of the decay, but basically the resurrection. So the Jews of Salonika controlled the port. They were the custom agents. They were the stevedores, the port workers. They were the fishermen. Their specialty was they had what was called a downis, a intermediary boat. So in other words, if a big ship came into the bay, they would take a little boat and unload the merchandise and then bring it to the port. The port was closed on Shabbat, but there was a very Jewish distinctive presence at the port. There's a classier picture of the Jews in thousands in the port boardwalk. I couldn't find that, but this is Shabbat in Salonika. This isn't the Ottoman period; it's already the Greek period. But you can see that they're dressed daintily on Shabbat in big numbers, and that was just to walk along the port was something to do in the afternoon. This is a panoramic view of the bay. Historically, the old city was on the upper part of the city. That's not where the Jews lived, but that's the character of the city with the city walls. That's where a lot more of the Turkish population lived. You see the city walls. Those exist today. At the port, though, the wall extended to the port I think in the 19th century. That was taken down and it became an open port. This is the White Tower, which is the symbol of Salonika. Essentially, it was an Ottoman prison called Yeni Kule. Per se, it has no Jewish connection, but it's just a symbol of the city. This is like an Ottoman house. Notice the rooms and sort of the porches strutting out. That's very typical of Ottoman architecture. Also, that's how you can identify a neighborhood, let's say in a Greek community or an Ottoman community where Jews lived. This is one of a rare picture we have of a Jewish family standing outside their house. There's no windows. It's pretty Spartan, but they look very authentic. Notice the dress of the woman. Hey, here are these. These aren't necessarily rabbis, but they're traditional people. You wouldn't necessarily say they're loafers, but who knows when it is. They probably study in yeshiva. They may be artisans, but in the late afternoon, they posed for a picture. There are already cameras at the end of the 19th century, so you'll have photo. This is the White Tower, but it shows you the area of the boardwalk near it. This is the Ottoman period. That's not the Greek period. So it's an old photo. Again, here are the traditional religious Salonican Jews standing around. In the 18th century, there's economic decline. There's a decline in the fabric industry, decline of the revenues and the prices that the Jews of Salonika can get in the world market. They have competition from England. They have competition from France, etc., etc. So then, because the community doesn't have money, there's stagnation. The school, whereas you had the advanced Talmud Torah in the 16th century, now basically you just have a cheder. It's a primitive system. You may not even have a wooden floor. There may be an earth floor. There's a traditional rabbi or teacher with a stick, but it's a Sephardic curriculum. They're teaching the poetry of Yehuda Levi and Spanish Jewish poets, and this is their legacy. At this point, it's not a Western education. They hardly know any math. They can barely read, and if they read, they'll read more in Hebrew. Okay, they're not going to know foreign languages. They know how to speak a Judeo-Spanish. At this point, they can't read in Latin characters a Spanish text. Me'am Loez was the weekly Parshat HaShavua, the Torah portion for the common man in Salonika, in a colloquial, in a simple language that he could understand, and it was in a colorful language. It had a lot of humor, a lot of analogies. It was very picturesque. The Jews, as the dominant group and now Western educated, they introduced modernization and industrialization to the city. They introduced the tram. They introduced the gas light as for public lighting. They introduced natural gas. They introduced eventually electricity, and of course the trains for the region. And this changed life tremendously. That's a contemporary picture by the White Tower, but those were gas lights put in the Ottoman period by Jewish pioneers. So the people in the Alliance, like Joseph Nechama, he was a pioneer in entering the gas lights. Alatini, who was a Livornese Jew, he advanced the Alliance and other in the Talmud Torah and other Western education. And the Alatini family had over 7 factories. They made bricks, they had mills, they made beer, and they employed a lot of the Greek Orthodox population. So there was a city of over 30 synagogues. So there, on the left, that's the consecration of the Talmud Torah. There was a big fire in 1891, as well as 1917. After the 1891 fire, they had to recreate the Talmud Torah, which was a synagogue plus a communal school, plus it had other functions. On the right, that's one of the only synagogues which still stands in Salonika. That's the synagogue of the Jews of Monastir. Well, essentially, they were under siege in World War I by the Bulgarians, and then many of them migrated to Salonika after World War I. This is the old cemetery, which the university stands on today. There are over 500,000 graves there. This is the quintessential Sephardic cemetery since the Spanish expulsion, and today we only have a few tablets. The Nazis ordered its destruction in 1942, and beginning of 1943, but this is a landmark. This building is called Matanot Levionim. This was where, today it's a nursery school and an elementary school. This is where the Jewish community gave lunches during the Ottoman period and the beginning of the Greek period to 6,000 kids for a hot lunch. This shows an astute sense of philanthropy and worrying about the other. This is one of the Alatini mills. The building still stands, I think, but this was a historic place. This is after it's abandoned. The Ottoman Bank of Salonika and the Bank of Salonika, these were buildings which were Jewish banks. The Modianos, who were Sephardic Jews, originally Livornese Jews, they were bankers. There were the Moseris, there was the Mar family, and many of these were noted big bankers. They also had branches in Paris and in Austria, all throughout Europe. This is the Modiano Market, which still exists today. It's a dead horse under the Greek government now under austerity, but it was a lively place, it's sort of like a Sephardic replica. These are Jewish villas, more in the eastern part of the city, on a street called Vasilea Olgas, or Queen Olga Street. So one of these mansions is the local historical museum. Some of them are even converted to like B&Bs, but they still remain. So you see the wealth. The followers of Shabtai Tzvi who converted to Islam were called Dunmei. They also were, some of them, especially one of the sects which was called Kapanji, they were very, very astute, wealthy tobacco merchants. So there's also a mansion, a villa of the Kapanji family in Salonika. This was the Alatini villa, which is this is the pedagogy school and foreign language school of the university today. Originally it was a mansion of the Alatini family, and then when the Young Turks revolted and the Jewish socialists attacked the capital, they took the Sultan Abdul Hamid prisoner and they brought him to Salonika, where he was put in jail in the Alatini mansion. There's another Alatini mansion at the edge of the city, near this Campbell neighborhood, which was burned down in the 1931 riots. The Alatinis lived in various parts of the cities. Most of the wealthier Jews, who often weren't Ottoman subjects, who were Italian or Spanish or whatever, they lived in the eastern part of the city, very far out from the Jewish community. The center of the city today isn't where the Jewish center was. The Jewish center was more toward in the middle part of the eastern part of the city. So there was Judeo-Spanish theater. Some of the plays were held in like major cinemas, like called the Pathé. In Salonika, the Jews didn't own the cinema so much. In Istanbul, they did. But this is just a replica of what we have. This is a postcard of that cinema. This was actually from the Greek period. It's a Jewish demonstration, but it just shows you that it's a big community, a big mass of people.